Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially, long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Good evening out there, Belly Up Fantasy Live fans. I am Chase Thornton coming to you, as always, from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar, and this is the Belly Up Fantasy Live Week 3 NFL preview. Flying solo tonight, but that's okay. I don't mind drinking alone. I've got plenty for myself, so let's get right into it. Over the next hour here, we're going to talk about the matchups on the games this week from the primetime slots. We'll talk about the Thursday night game, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, and then we'll get into some of the more interesting matchups and news tidbits, injuries, and the like from Sunday. Okay, I hope everybody had a good weekend. I'll tell you what, I think over the first 2 weeks of the NFL season so far, they have nailed it in terms of programming. I think we were all starved for football. I know at least I was. Generally, those of us who play fantasy are a little bit more into the game than maybe some other people are. So I know we were all waiting for it. I thought the week 1 slate of games, the marquee matchups that they had on paper were just phenomenal. But I'll tell you what, they kind of outdid themselves this last weekend with all of the crazy surprise finishes and games that people didn't obviously think were going to go the way that they went. If you're in a Survivor League and if you're still in a Survivor pool, you're doing better than I am because I'm out after 2 weeks. A good portion of people have fallen by the wayside in Survivor pools over the first 2 weeks because of all the chaos that we've seen from teams that weren't frankly supposed to be all that good coming up and shocking the world. We've seen injuries, decimate certain teams in certain positions. We've already got 3 starting quarterbacks at the moment who are out. One of those is coming back soon, hopefully here in Zach Wilson of the New York Jets. We've seen star running backs going down so far. We've seen guys that were really good players in week 1 at the wide receiver position have to miss last week. We are in full swing now after 2 weeks of the fantasy football season and the NFL season. So let's get right into it here and let's look at the Thursday night matchup this week. We've got a big rivalry matchup. We've had a couple of really good matchups so far from week 1 and week 2, but we've got a big rivalry matchup this week with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Now, these are a couple of teams that, coming into the season, I think the expectations were a lot bigger for the Browns, even though the Steelers did make the playoffs and beat the Browns last year in the AFC North. But I think there were high expectations for the Cleveland Browns coming into this season. Now, we all know that, the story behind their quarterback saga. Baker Mayfield, won't he be there? They obviously shipped him to Carolina after the big trade for Deshaun Watson. Now, we know that Deshaun Watson is not going to be there until week 12 at the earliest. And that's if they want him there, and if they want to expose him to live snaps this season. If we'll see how they're sitting when that time comes. If they're sitting in a competitive position and they think they can get better with Deshaun Watson back there, or if they think it's going to behoove them to get him some time, then he may be out there. But if they're cruising and Brissette looks good or they're following him, they may or may not jump to him right away. But obviously, we're sitting where we're at in Cleveland with Jacoby Brissette running the offense right now. And, here's a team that's 1-1 after 2 weeks and easily should be 2-0. Obviously, this past weekend, the 13-point lead with less than 2 minutes to go, the Jets come back to shock them and the world. It's the first time it's happened since the Browns, I think was it 2001 or something like this? It's been over 2,300 games since a team was up by at least 13 with less than 2 minutes to go and lost. The Jets, now give them credit. We're going to have to give the Jets some credit. They didn't stop fighting. They came back. They played hard, and here they are. Here they are with a win under their belts when nobody thought that they would. But the Cleveland Browns, from a fantasy standpoint, they are what we thought they were. Okay. Nobody thought we were going to get a ton out of Jacoby Brissette. Jacoby Brissette, is a good veteran quarterback. He's a guy who's going to, run the offense, run it competently. He understands situations. He's not going to get rattled. He's been in this position before. He has been a starter in this league. He's been a high-profile backup in this league that's had to start before. So we knew we were going to get, what we were going to get out of Jacoby Brissette. Nobody drafted him as their QB1 on their team. And because of Brissette being the quarterback, I don't think any of us had a ton of, high hopes for Amari Cooper, for Donovan Peoples-Jones, for David Njoku, although Njoku was a bit of a preseason darling after signing his big extension. I think a lot of people were hoping that he would be a little bit bigger part of the offense than he has been to date. But they are what we thought they were in terms of they are a run-heavy team. They are a run-first team. They want to set up the pass off of the run, and why wouldn't they? They've got two of the best running backs in the entire league. I mean, if your team had two running backs that were as good as Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you'd want them to run too. It wouldn't matter who your quarterback is. So right now, if you want to take a look at, where their running backs are sitting, Nick Chubb is the number one overall running back in fantasy right now after 2 weeks. He's got 228 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns, leads the league in that from rushing standpoint. He's caught every target he's had. Now he's only had 4 targets, but he's scoring 47.6 points on the year right now, and he is the number one running back in fantasy. And we knew he was going to get high volume, high touches. We knew he was going to get the important touches. He was going to run the ball in the red zone. That they were going to rely on him. And when you've got an offensive line like Cleveland has, and Cleveland has had, why wouldn't you rely on them? They were a top 10 offense ranked by PFF last season. Coming into this week, they are ranked number 5 by PFF, and that's with basically he's technically their starter now. He's technically their second string center, but in all essence, he's a third string center, and Ethan Posick there. So, I mean, when you've got an offensive line that can do the things that they can do, and you've got a running back like Nick Chubb, who is tough to tackle, but also still quick enough to break one and break the long runs, you're going to want to run that football anyway. But then you want to talk about luxury, and you want to talk about just, an embarrassment of riches. Right now, Kareem Hunt is running back 10 overall in the league. He's had only 24 rushing attempts and only 6 targets, but he's caught all 6 of those targets. He's breaking, good runs. He's getting good looks. He's scored a couple of touchdowns himself. And so, you're looking at a situation where whether they're on the field together or whoever you've got in the game at the time between Chubb and Hunt, the threat of the run is there, and the threat of the pass is still there. Even if Chubb's on the field, he's not known as a pass catching threat, but like I said, he hasn't dropped the target yet this year, and he's only 2 targets behind Hunt on the season through these first 2 weeks. You are happy as a clam right now if you drafted either or both of these. I know a few people in a couple of my leagues who took Chubb and Hunt together, and not as a handcuff situation, but as a play them together, because that's the faith that they had in this running game. Now, I'm not going to advocate that necessarily, but right now it's worked out through 2 weeks. You've got 2 top 10 running backs if you drafted them both. Nick Chubb is obviously an every week start. He's a locked in running back 1. I think it'll shake out by the end of the season that Kareem Hunt will be a starting running back, but not a top 10, 12 type option. But right now, if you've got either of them, you have to start them. In the pass game, let's look at the pass game of the Cleveland Browns. Now, again, we knew we weren't going to get a ton out of Jacoby Brissette. We knew he wasn't going to, shoot the lights out and be anybody's idea of a savior. They're hoping he can keep them competitive until Watson gets back. And that's why last week was such a killer for them. You're looking for Jacoby Brissette to just keep you competitive, keep your head and your record above water until you can get your all-world quarterback Deshaun Watson back. And games like Sunday where you're up 2 touchdowns, you have to take advantage of. Now, from a fantasy standpoint, if you've got Chubb, you love that he ran it in the end zone. However, from a realistic standpoint, from a real football standpoint, obviously in hindsight, retrospect, Had he gone down, they could have run that clock out. But in terms of Jacoby Brissette, he's quarterback 21 on the season, which I think is a little better than a lot of people thought he would be. Now, like I said, he's going to be an efficient quarterback, and he's going to be a competent quarterback. He's going to be a game manager and run your offense. But if you've got him as a number 2 quarterback in, say, a superflex 2 quarterback situation, you can do worse than that. To be honest with you right now, he's outscoring guys that we would have thought would have been at the top of the charts by now. He's outscoring guys like Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill. He has not been the fantasy killer that I think that a lot of people were afraid of. Now, he has not had a great effect on their pass game. If you want to take a look at how they've fared in the pass game, Amari Cooper, he's got 16 targets. He's averaging 8 targets a game, 16 targets through 2 weeks and 12 catches, only 118 yards and the 1 score. But that's not for where we had him pegged coming into the year. That's not bad. It's not Amari Cooper with Dak Prescott throwing to him. It's not Amari Cooper with Derek Carr throwing to him. But we didn't expect that coming into this season. So if you've got Amari Cooper, if you're playing him, you've still got right now a low-end wide receiver 2, and that's how he scored on the year. He's wide receiver 20 overall right now. So if you've got Amari Cooper, you don't have to feel bad about running him out there every week, especially if you drafted him as such. If you drafted him as a wide receiver 2, if you drafted him as a flexible option, you're getting exactly what you thought you would out of him, and that's a good sign. That's a good sign. It's much better sign, I will say, than it has been for David Njoku so far. David Njoku has been kind of a disappointment so far in fantasy. He was drafted. He was drafted as a tight end too, but he was drafted as a guy with a lot of preseason hype that a lot of people were thinking after the big extension, he was going to end up being, a big weapon in this offense. A lot of people, myself included, I will raise my hand and admit that, a lot of people thought that David Njoku would end up being kind of a comfort zone, security blanket type for Jacoby Brissette. He plays tight end, and a lot of times, you got a guy in there that's not a superstar, and we didn't think they were going to be looking downfield a ton. You dump off underneath to the tight end, and I think a lot of people thought that David Njoku was going to get some of those kind of looks. Through 2 games, he's got 6 targets. He's only got 4 catches, only got 39 yards, hasn't scored yet, and just has not necessarily looked like a focal point at the moment of this offense. He still has all the physical abilities in the world, but we haven't really seen out of him in his career yet to this point the kind of player that is going to be that superstar. By this point in his career, maybe David Njoku just is what he is. He's, we can blame it on Baker Mayfield for the last couple of seasons. We can blame it on having Austin Hooper signed to the big contract for the last couple of years or whatever. You can blame it on, the passing game and Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, but all of those excuses are gone now. Now, granted, he's playing with Jacoby Brissette as his starting quarterback, but maybe at this point, I've said it before. You guys have heard me say it on this show. You've heard me say it on other shows. You'll hear me say it again, and I will write it again in my articles. At a certain point, guys are who we thought they were, to spin the phrase from Denny Green, rest in peace. And at this point, maybe David Njoku just isn't a guy that's going to be reliable in fantasy and is ever going to hit. Now, if you can take him in a best ball, if you've got him in a best ball type format, great, because at some point he's going to get his. At some point this year, he's going to have one of those games. He's going to get in the end zone, but it just doesn't look right now at this point like he's going to be a reliable enough every week in, week out type option. If you've got him on your roster, and if there's guys out there like Logan Thomas right now on the Washington Redskins, who look like they do have a legitimate passing attack. Carson Wentz, has actually looked like good Carson for the first couple of weeks of the season, and they look aggressive in the pass game. They've got good options. Logan Thomas might be a better option for you right now if you've got David Njoku. If for some reason, Gerald Everett is out there and you can get him, take a look that direction. David Njoku, at this point right now, it's only 2 weeks into the season. We do not want to overreact to what we've seen so far because it's only 2 weeks. But at a certain point, you're going to have to come to grips with maybe who you have is who you have. You're not going to dump David Njoku necessarily right now. But like I said, if there's an option out there like a Logan Thomas that you can get who looks like going forward, he's going to be maybe a much better option. But if nothing else, he'll be a lateral move. It's not going to hurt you to make that switch. Then I'd go ahead and do it. But now, let's look at the other side of the field. Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, because this is a team right now that looks to be in a little bit of flux and chaos offensively. Now we've had the injury to Najee Harris, which kind of screwed some things up for yours truly, because I've got him across a ton of leagues here. But this is an offense that has not looked overly great. They're not running the ball all that efficiently at all. Now, they weren't that efficient last season either, but there was a ton of volume for them with Najee Harris running behind that line. But they haven't necessarily shot the lights out passing wise either. Deontay Johnson, leading receiver through 2 weeks, has 22 targets, and that's great, but he's only caught 13% of them. 13 of them for 59%. I mean, we're looking at Mitch Trubisky, and he's hitting less than 60% right now of his passes. He's at 59% on the season. He's 42 of 71 on the season. He's only thrown 1 interception, which is nice to see, but 2 touchdowns. He's not running the ball, overly much. He's only got 4 attempts rushing through 2 games. And I think that that's part of where Mitch Trubisky's value lies as a quarterback. Mitch Trubisky's a little bit better athlete than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And I think a big part of Mitch Trubisky's game is being able to be mobile, get out and run a little bit. Unfortunately for anybody in that Pittsburgh offense right now, and if you're a Steeler fan, I think you understand I'm not just blowing smoke. That offensive line is what's holding back the Pittsburgh Steelers from being not only what they can be, in real life on the field, but on your fantasy, team as well. That's a team right now that was ranked in the bottom, by PFF last year. Right now, as we speak, they still, even after retooling that line a little bit and bringing some guys in and switching some things around, they're the number 28 ranked team by PFF in their current offensive line rankings. And that's up 2 from last week. Okay. This is a team that just, they don't pass block very well. They don't run block very well. Well, that's the 2 things that you need your offensive line to do. I'm not saying anything. I'm not giving away any kind of trade secrets here. Offensive line is meant to do 2 things: block for the rushers, block for the passers. Now they haven't allowed a ton of pressures on Trubisky. He hasn't been sacked overly much necessarily, but that's because, this team, when they throw the ball, they're just getting the ball out. They don't want their team to have to pass block any longer than they have to. But the real, sad part of things is that they have this great running back in Najee Harris, this guy who's a hammer of a running back, who we know can handle a workload and handle a pounding workload. I know there was a little bit of the injury scare with him coming off of, week 1. And was the Liz Frank injury coming back up to haunt him? I don't think that that's necessarily a factor. I think the bigger factor right now limiting Najee Harris is that offensive line. Harris wasn't a ton efficient last year, averaged under 4 yards a carry last season, but you knew he was going to get the ball all the time, and they were going to feed it to him. That's still the case. They don't have anybody behind him. It's one of those situations where you would have loved to have had, especially hearing about the injury in the preseason. A lot of people were scared, thought, geez, maybe I better handcuff Najee Harris. He's not really in a position where there's a handcuff to give him in that team. We all remember he had the 19 target game last season as well. They use him whenever they can, but they don't have anybody behind him, whether you're talking Benny Snell, whether you're talking about Jalen Warren or anyone else. They don't really have anybody else behind him that can do the things that they ask of Najee Harris. And so there really wasn't a good option for handcuffing him. So if he does go down, or if he does miss any time with this offensive line and the alleged talent, we'll say, behind Najee Harris, I don't think that there's anybody usable in that backfield for rushing purposes going forward. Unfortunately, I think it looks like we may have to temper our expectations a little bit for Najee Harris. They may try to protect him a little bit if this injury thing looks like it is going to pop up here and there, if it's something he's going to have to play through. I still think he's going to get a ton of volume. I still think he's going to get a ton of usage. I think they're going to throw to him. They're going to run with him. But this is not a guy that's going to average 5.6 yards a carry this season or anything like that. You're hoping for volume. You're hoping for some red zone volume as well. Unfortunately, it's just not a team that looks like they're going to be in the red zone all that often. If you look at their receiving core, you look at their wide receivers here, like I said, Deontay Johnson is a good receiver. He's a very good receiver. And he's one of those guys that I had ranked pretty high because I thought that with Trubisky's athleticism, I thought this would be a bad offensive line coming into the season, and they look like it. But I thought that with Trubisky's athleticism, they would do some things to kind of mitigate the damage from that, and that he would still be able to get the ball out to guys like Deontay Johnson and like Chase Claypool. There was a ton of hype around George Pickens in the preseason. And he looks like he's going to be a good player. He looks like he could be a guy. Unfortunately, he's only got 6 targets through 2 games. And we haven't had a wide receiver yet catch a touchdown for this team. When you've got Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool as your top 2 wide receivers, George Pickens, bringing up the third there, 2 games into the season, they really should have had, somebody in there should have had a touchdown by now. I think this is an offense that we are going to have to monitor going forward. You likely spent a decent draft pick on Deontay Johnson. He was an acknowledged, top level type guy coming into the season. You likely spent a decent draft pick on Najee Harris back into the first round, high second, possibly even. If you invested that kind of, draft pick into those guys, you're going to have to hold them for now. But it's a situation to monitor going forward. You're going to have to temper your expectations. You're going to have to hope that you can get some production somewhere else in your lineup, because this does not look to be an offense going forward that's going to be all that explosive, all that sustainable. If Trubisky keeps hitting less than 60% of his passes, there's been a lot of call for Kenny Pickett to be coming in. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if this team isn't going anywhere this season, I'm of the opinion that I'd rather not see Kenny Pickett come in. I don't want to see them ruin the kid in a possibly lost season. I'd rather have Trubisky, show him the ropes, keep a guy in here who knows what he's doing. A rookie quarterback, I don't think is necessarily going to bode any better for the guys on this team from a fantasy standpoint. So I think that, from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not necessarily screaming for Kenny Pickett to take over in Pittsburgh. I think from a football fan standpoint, a guy who's watched the game for a long time, I've coached, I played a little bit. I would rather see them not throw Kenny Pickett in there to the Wolves. I would rather see them hang on and gut it out with Mitch Trubisky and see what they can do this year. Let Kenny Pickett sit and develop and learn behind him for a while. So if you've got Steelers on your lineup, man, I'm sorry. I've got some of them too. I was one of the highest guys on Najee Harris. I had him ranked at number 3 preseason because I thought, well, heck yeah, volume's going to be king on that. And so I've got a lot of shares of Najee too. I'm right there in the same boat with you, but I think we're going to have to temper our expectations and kind of step back. All right, let's take a time out here. We'll listen to our sponsor from Manscaped, hear from them. And then afterwards, this is what's called a tease in the business. We'll look at the Sunday night matchup then.
Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your ball care doesn't have to be with Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Meet the best valued bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rockets, the Platinum Package. At quarterback, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, a wily vet who makes sure the unit is running smoothly and scoring nonstop with proprietary advanced skin-safe technology The lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the ball. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue. At running back, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, built to bust through all the right holes. A hairless nostril just helps it keep a nose for the end zone. On the offensive line, we have our unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Lindsley of Sack Protection, standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean through all 4 quarters. At wideout, the cleanest duo in the league, the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo plus Conditioner. With their rugged scent, they attract both the ball and all the ladies in the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and scalp feeling more hydrated. That means more plays on the field and less water breaks. At tight end, the product makes your end look tight. Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs, a dedicated jewel pouch to increase ball handling and a cool, steady vibe thanks to their moisture-wicking fabric. On defense, there's only one thing you need, the aluminum-free Ultra Premium Deodorant. With refined cologne, quality fragrance, it keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground. Plus, it dries clear, so the opponent won't even know what hit them. To top it all off, we throw in the best coach in the league, the Shred Travel Bag, as a free bonus. Built to hold the team together, this travel-sized bag has a fumble-resistant zipper. This has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster, but don't take my word for it. Go to Manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASy. Manscaped, for turning your player into an MVP.
All right. Thanks to Dan Mader for reading that. I'll tell you what, folks, I got my Manscaped care package in the mail this past weekend, and I could not be happier with it. My wife kind of thought it was appropriate. I do tend to take longer than she does to get ready, so something like a Manscaped care package was perfect for me. So go ahead and take a look at Manscaped. Remember to use that promo code BELLYUP, get 20% off there. All right, let's move on to the Sunday night game now. We're going to look at the 49ers at the Broncos. And now here's a couple of teams, again, that had some hype coming into this season. And rightfully so. 49ers coming off an NFC Championship game appearance, beating the Packers in the playoffs there, making a good run of things and taking it down to the last minute there against the Rams, the eventual Super Bowl champions. And the Denver Broncos bringing in, Russell Wilson. There was a lot of hype around that and hoping that he could take that franchise to the next level and step things up. The story right now with the 49ers, unfortunately, the story of their season through 2 games is injuries. We just talked about the quarterback drama that plagued the Cleveland Browns all off season. Well, if that was drama, then what they've got going on in 49er land might be a tragedy. They traded up. They expended a ton of capital to go up and get Trey Lance, and it looked like the writing was on the wall for Jimmy Garoppolo. Guy can't catch a break. He was drafted in New England. He was, looked like he was going to be developed behind Tom Brady, and then he moved on to San Francisco and signed the big contract there. And it looked like he was going to be able to take that team places. And then, he's dealt with injuries of his own. And then, they move up and they take Trey Lance, and it looks like they've got their guy of the future. And turns out that they wanted the future to be now rather than later. And, there was a lot of speculation. Was Garoppolo going to be traded this offseason? Was he going to be released? Well, what was going to happen with Jimmy G? And then turned out nothing happened with him. They brought him back. They restructured his contract a little bit, made it a little more team friendly. He had a lot of incentives built in, but basically they kept him around because they had to. They had no other choice, really. Week and a half or so into the season, that looked pretty fortuitous. With Trey Lance going down, had the ankle injury, the bad ankle injury last weekend, and he had surgery to repair that. Sounds like, by all accounts, it was a successful surgery. Doctors say that they fully expect him to be back and ready for the start of next season, which is good news for him, good news for the team. He had ligament damage and a broken, I believe it was fibula, that had to be repaired. And for a guy who's a mobile quarterback or known as a mobile quarterback, and that was part of his, that was a big part of his allure, not just from a fantasy standpoint, but for the 49ers themselves. We'll see. And hopefully that doesn't hinder him going forward at all. That doesn't have to change his style of play or take away his play personality, should we say. But for better or worse, they are running with Jimmy G from here on out. Garoppolo, of course, led them to that NFC Championship game last season. He's been a serviceable quarterback, good quarterback, in the past. And honestly, from a fantasy standpoint, I don't know that this hurts anybody's fantasy prospects unless you were one of the guys or girls that threw your lot in with Trey Lance and took him as a prospective flyer. I know it was one of the popular strategies this season, if you were going to wait on quarterback, was to target somebody like Lance later on because of that rushing floor that we all expected him to provide. I know that in my preseason rankings, I had Eli Mitchell downgraded, and I was not as high on him as some other people were because I just foresaw Trey Lance taking a lot of those carries, a lot of the, almost like the Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen syndrome, where your best red zone runner might be your quarterback. I kind of foresaw that being the situation in San Francisco this season. Well, obviously that's not going to be the case anymore, but on top of their Trey Lance injury, they're dealing with Eli Mitchell injury for the next possibly 2 months. He's out as well. So unfortunately, injuries have derailed that San Francisco 49er, team so far this season. Now they played the first game of the season in, the monsoon swamp against the Bears. You can't really take anything away from that game in terms of, offensive strategies or anything like that. That was a game that whatever was going to work, you were going to run, and then you were hoping to survive that game and come out of it. But going forward now, we've got Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball to the likes of Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, if and when he's ever healthy. I think this bodes well for their pass game. I think if you've got a pass catcher from the San Francisco 49ers, this is not bad news for you at all. Jimmy G is a good, solid quarterback. He's not going to be, he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to put up Tom Brady-esque numbers. We all know that. But, we're talking about a guy here who, can hit over 60% of his passes. And, whereas Trey Lance was hitting 48% before he got hurt there. Jimmy Garoppolo, on his career, hits over 60% of his passes. He's a little bit more efficient passer than Trey Lance is. And I think that he's never hit 30 touchdowns necessarily per se in his career, but he's got 30 touchdown capability, especially with some of the receivers of the receiving core and talent that he has around him right now. If Kittle can stay healthy and if he can get the ball out and get some time to throw to, guys like Ayuk and Deebo, this is an offense that can still roll. It's an offense right now that's got a good offensive line. The 49ers right now are ranked 10th by PFF. If you want to look at their rankings over there at their site, they're a little bit better on the outside. They're a little bit better at the tackles than they are on the inside, but having a good, strong offensive line means that, you're not losing, any kind of capability in terms of their offense. They didn't necessarily set the offense up to have to be a mobile quarterback. This is not the same situation that they're dealing with in Pittsburgh. Let's just put it that way, all the way around. So Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who can lead these guys not only to wins, but he can lead them to fantasy relevancy. I mean, Deebo Samuel played last season with Jimmy Garoppolo as his quarterback. Brandon Ayuk had flashes, and then later in the year looked like he was going to be the guy that we were all hoping Brandon Ayuk would be. So I'm kind of excited to see now what can happen. I've got some shares of Deebo. I don't have as much of Brandon Ayuk. He just didn't go in the right spots for me to get him in any of my leagues. But I've got some Deebo Samuel shares. I steered away from George Kittle. I was a little worried of him coming into the year just because of the injury concerns that he's had and the inconsistencies that he's had. But if you've got George Kittle, he's still a top 5 capable tight end. And I think that it bodes better for him with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, tomorrow night, we're not looking at a game, we're looking at a game where they might have to throw more than they have the first 2 weeks against the Broncos here. To keep up with the Broncos and to beat them, they may have to throw a little bit more. So if you've got Debo, I like that. I like Debo a lot here going forward this season. They have still used Debo Samuel in that, hybrid wide back type role. They have used him that way. There was a lot of speculation over the offseason. Oh, he complained about his contract and who knows how much he's going to run. And, no, put those fears to rest. They are going to use Debo Samuel the best way that they can. They're going to put him in positions to do the best thing that he can for that team. And that means they're going to hand him the ball. He's actually got 13 targets on the year. He's got 12 rushing attempts. He's literally split his usage right dead down the middle in terms of that. If you want to look at it that way, his touches are coming right down the middle. Now he only has the 1 touchdown on the year so far, but it did come rushing. You are going to still see volume in many different ways for Debo Samuel. And tomorrow night, with Jimmy Garoppolo throwing in a game, they might have to have a little more offense than they've had to have in the first 2 weeks here. I think you're going to see Debo Samuel get the ball a lot. And with the injuries in their backfield, now not only are they missing Eli Mitchell here for 2 months, but keep in mind that Tyrion Davis-Price, the guy that they drafted here this past NFL draft, he's out for a while now too, going to miss some time with an injury. They're down to Jeff Wilson Jr., who again is a guy that is a good player in this league. He's probably a better real life player than he is fantasy player. I think from a fantasy standpoint, he is what he is right now, even in a Shanahan San Francisco high rushing volume offense. And then Jordan Mason, the undrafted rookie who basically was able to kick Trey Sermon off the team. Now they have, we haven't seen Jordan Mason much, yet, but you're not going to see Elijah Mitchell. Tyrion Davis-Price is going to miss some time. He's definitely out for this coming weekend for Sunday night. So you're looking at Jeff Wilson and Jordan Mason right now as the top 2 options in that rushing attack. And we know it's a good rushing attack. If you've got Jeff Wilson, or if he's on waivers, maybe in your league still, he shouldn't be. He should have been one of the top ads after probably week 1. But if he is for some reason still out there, if Mason is still out there, feel free, go ahead and grab those guys. Another guy that might be a sneaky ad though for you, and I don't know if it'll come into play necessarily this Sunday, but possibly next week and going forward would be Marlon Mack. Remember, they signed him a couple weeks ago to their practice squad. They are going to, it looks like, elevate him coming up here for the foreseeable future with all the injuries that they're dealing with in their backfield. And Marlon Mack is a guy that, I ragged on him a little bit after Damian Pierce basically kicked him out of Houston. If you couldn't beat out Rex Burkhead and a rookie, what really is there left for you to do? But, he's found himself in a good situation in San Francisco, a team that likes to use their running backs and has, now looks like they may have some carries available. If you're in a deeper league, if you've got a deeper bench or, dynasty situation or whatever, if he's out there, feel free to grab him as a speculative ad, but I wouldn't play him this week. I think it's going to be the Debo and Jeff Wilson show this weekend in San Francisco. Now, on the other side of the field, we're looking at the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. Now, Russ is definitely the best quarterback that they've had there in quite some time. I don't think anybody will argue that. He's not had a terrible performance so far. It's just they haven't had the success that I think we all thought they would have as a team offensively yet so far. Russ coming over from Seattle, coming to a team where it looked like he had a ton of passing weapons around him. They were 4 deep basically at wide receiver. They had a good core of tight ends, including, a high draft pick in Dulcich. It looked like this was a team, with a good backfield, a stacked backfield, in fact, between Williams and his old teammate, Melvin Gordon III. Looked like this was a team that really should put up some offensive points, and they haven't necessarily performed up to snuff the way that I think we all wanted them to and the way we thought they would so far. If you want to take a look at things and put any blame on it, I don't know that there's anywhere you can lay blame right now to pinpoint why they haven't necessarily been, the juggernaut offensively that we all were looking for. They've got a good, decent offensive line. Their offensive line was a question mark, I think, coming into this year, and they didn't even have their starters set until pretty late in the preseason, I should say. But right now they're grading out as number 11 for PFF's offensive line rankings, and they've performed well against some tough teams. Now, you want to talk about losing Tim Patrick. That hurt. They lost him in the preseason, so now they were down to 3, and KJ Hamler being one of their wide receivers. KJ Hamler isn't necessarily, he's a guy that gets some love in fantasy circles, and I think he's a good football player, but KJ Hamler's not necessarily a guy that looks like he fits into that offense and is going to take a ton of a ton of value. He's just not. He's got 1 target through 2 games so far, and he gets some love in terms of name value and name recognition, but Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are the guys to look at here. And through 2 games, no shock. Cortland Sutton, big-bodied receiver. We know Russ likes the big-bodied receivers. He came from Seattle. He had DK Metcalf and the excellent tandem they have there of Metcalf and Lockett. And I think a lot of people thought Cortland Sutton was going to have a great year. I was a little lower on him and a little higher on Jerry Jeudy, I think, than most were so far. Sutton looks to be really good. Jeudy had the big touchdown catch week 1 there, and looks to be quick, looks to be tough to cover. Now he's dealing with a little bit of an injury issue there, but if he can get the 2 of them on the field at the same time, Russell Wilson's numbers are going to be fine. If you drafted Russell Wilson as a lower end starter, as you should have, and and that's where he should have gone, and that's where he did go. If you drafted him as a lower end starter, hang on to him. You're going to be fine. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, they're going to give you their points. And even this Sunday, against San Francisco, I don't think that they're going to have a ton of trouble necessarily keeping up with San Francisco. I don't know that they're going to have to throw the ball, 40 times this game or anything. But when they do throw the ball, so far, it has been going to 3 guys. It's been going to Sutton, it's been going to Jeudy, and it's been going to Javonte Williams. It has not been going, to my chagrin and the rest of his owners, to Albert Okwuegbunam. They're young, much hyped this preseason tight end. Allo, as some people have taken to calling him, he came into the season with a lot of excitement. He's quick, he's athletic, he's got good hands, he's got decent size. A lot of people were thinking that he could, like David Njoku. I had them ranked right next to each other as low-end tight end starters in my preseason rankings because I thought, he looked like the kind of weapon that they would use in this offense. Nathaniel Hackett, coming from Green Bay, he hadn't called plays in Green Bay, and Green Bay wasn't necessarily known for using their tight ends a ton, but when they do use their tight ends, they use them in the red zone. And so I thought, hey, between everything that's going on with the rest of their offense, there should be looks underneath for Albert Okwuegbunam. And Russell Wilson is the best quarterback that they've had there, and Albert O might be the best tight end, from a physical tools standpoint, might be the best tight end that Russell's played with in his career. He looked like a good marriage, a good match. But right now, Okwuegbunam is just not getting the looks, that we hoped he would. Now he's got 8 targets through 2 games. He's caught 5 of them, but he's only caught 33 yards receiving. 5 catches for 33 yards through 2 games. You've got to average more than 16.5 yards a game if you're going to be fantasy relevant. They haven't necessarily given him a ton of looks everywhere else. They've actually split their tight end looks pretty evenly between him and the other 2 guys right now on the roster, Eric Saubert and Andrew Beck. Now, Greg Dulcich, who a lot of people expected to be there to run as their number 2, has been injured. He won't be back for a little while yet. When he comes back, we may see a little bit more of a 2-man split type thing rather than this kind of tight end by committee that they've run so far. But to this point, Albert O has been, again, like David Njoku, a bit of a disappointment in terms of his fantasy output. I've got some shares of him because, again, I was waiting on tight end. I'm not typically one that goes and drafts a premium tight end right away. I if you don't get one of the top 2 or 3 guys, if you're not getting Kelsey, if you're not getting Andrews, we may throw Waller if he was ever going to be healthy in there. If you're not getting one of those top guys, then I'm advocating waiting on tight end, because it's just such a crapshoot from week to week. It's a roll of the dice, and you never know what you're going to get with any of them. So I've got some shares of Albert O, and unfortunately right now, I haven't seen a whole lot of return on that. Now, again, I'm holding that. I'm not advocating going out and dumping him right away. He may have some looks coming up here on Sunday, and I hope that he does. But to this point, it looks like the value in this offense really is going to go through Cortland Sutton and Javonte Williams. And that's another call that I had in the preseason. I was seeing this backfield as much more of an even split. And after 1 week, it looked like it was going to be a fairly even split. But the fairly even split was weird in that Javonte Williams was the one of the 2 running backs that was getting more of the pass catches. He was getting more of the looks in the pass game, and then Gordon was getting more of the run. Now that kind of flipped on its ear this past week, and we saw Williams take a lot more snaps. He got much more run, much more play than Melvin Gordon did. And we may be seeing him now start to distance himself. I think we all looked at the situation and thought that Williams was the better player at this point in their careers. He's a violent runner. He's electric with the ball in his hand. He's fun to watch. At this point right now, they've both got the exact same number of rushing attempts through 2 games, but Javonte Williams is out targeting Melvin Gordon 16-3 right now. That's the kind of workload usage that you want to look for. This might be a bit of a frustrating backfield going forward in terms of Williams may be the guy, but right now Gordon has out-touched him at the goal line. And, you're never going to be, I don't think, quite sure who they're going to run out and when either of those guys is going to go off and have the game. If you want to put money on one or the other, Williams is the guy to put money on right now. I think Gordon is still going to be a decent value for where you drafted him because their draft values were so far apart. But if you're looking for a guy to put your money on this coming weekend, with the 49ers and the pass rush that they're going to be trying to offer against the Broncos may go to Javonte Williams a little bit more than we've seen them go to him so far this season. So I like Javonte Williams in that game to possibly cement himself as that definite number 1 option in Denver, not only in all of our minds and in the eye test, but in the snap count and in the usage rates as well. So, keep an eye on that. Take a look at that. But if you've got Javonte Williams right now, I think you've got the top back in that offense going forward. Temper your expectations, though, for this Sunday and going forward, because Melvin Gordon is not necessarily going away, and there's not a whole lot behind him to speak of. If you've got Russell Wilson, they may find some tough sledding a little bit against the 49ers, but Russell Wilson's going to get his. He's going to find Cortland Sutton. He's going to find Jerry Jeudy. If Jerry Jeudy's healthy, he's going to be just fine as well. All right, we're going to step back. We're going to take another break here. We're going to listen to our True Classic ad here, our second sponsor. And when we come back on the other side of that, we'll talk about the Monday night game.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BellyUpFantasy. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BellyUpFantasy. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look.
All right, here we are back. Let's talk about the Monday night game. We're looking at the Cowboys and the Giants, another divisional matchup and a primetime game. There's been a ton of those, so it seems like already so far this season. And here's a game that, maybe lost a little bit of its luster in some people's eyes with the Dak Prescott injury going down. And now we're going to see, Cooper Rush, Daniel Jones matchup here on Monday Night Football. But to me, this is an interesting game. Cooper Rush did not fold. They didn't just give up the season when Dak Prescott went down. Cooper Rush, comes out last week, leads them to a victory. And you've got a team on the other side in the New York Giants that, you want to talk about maybe one of the surprises so far of this NFL season. New York Giants are 2-0, folks. New York Giants have won a game on the road. They've won a game at home. And they've looked like a team that has some grit, some guts. Now, being in the same division as the Philadelphia Eagles, who have looked like world beaters, is not necessarily a good thing for the Giants, or the Cowboys, or for Washington either, that matter. But the Giants look like a team that has that kind of grit and toughness. They've found a way to win through 2 weeks. They have found a way to win through 2 weeks. And last year and for quite a few years, it seemed like they were finding ways to lose. They may be experiencing a little bit of a culture change there underneath Brian Daboll. So this team, and this game, I think is a little more intriguing than it may have first appeared. The loser of this game is going to fall to 1-2, is going to be last place in the division. Regardless of what happens with Washington, regardless of what happens with Philadelphia, the loser of this game is going to be 1-2, and they're going to be possibly 2.5 games behind the leader in the division after 3 weeks. And so, this is a game that both of these teams really have to look at as an opportunity here. For the Giants, it's an opportunity to put yourself in good standing here the rest of the way and really kind of cement yourself as a team not to be taken lightly. Now, I'm not going to come out here and tell you, Wednesday before week 3 that the New York Giants are going to challenge for a playoff spot. But if they're going to keep themselves relevant, a win this weekend would go a long ways toward doing that, towards putting them in position to remain relevant and play some meaningful football deep into this season. For the Cowboys, a loss here, putting them at 1-2 with their backup quarterback, with some of the offensive problems that they've had so far, could really be, that could be a devastating blow even this early in the season. Now there's all the rumors that are swirling around, speculation that everybody wants to know. Is Mike McCarthy going to be gone after this season? Are they going to bring Sean Payton in? I think a lot of people are looking at that as a foregone conclusion. I myself, it might happen in the off season. I don't think it will happen during the season. I don't think they'll make a change in season with Mike McCarthy, but if they could win this game, it would go a long way for them as well to kind of quell some of the uproar and some of the doubters around them. All right. So, we're talking about a team here now in Dallas. Obviously, they've lost their starting quarterback for a while. Dak Prescott, again, throwing an injury to his throwing hand, had to have surgery. Sounds like it's probably a 2-month absence, 6 to 8 weeks. Jerry Jones, of course, never one to shut his mouth, is coming out and saying, well, I think we can get him back. He might be ready to be back in 4 weeks. Well, Jerry, the worst thing that you can do for your team right now is rush your starting franchise quarterback, one of the top guys in the league when he's playing on his game. One of the worst things I think you can do is push him back too early to try and make something out of this season if it's not really there for you to begin with. This is an offensive line that lost a lot of pieces this past offseason. They lost a lot of parts, not only to free agency and trades and that, but they lost some guys now due to injury. They're dealing with cast-offs at tackle basically on both sides, or, essentially on both sides. They did not want to have a rookie starting at left tackle for them, although he did show some improvement this week and was actually pretty highly graded rookie this past week. But, this is a team that doesn't necessarily look like they've got everything they need to make a real serious deep run. I think that they allowed their offensive line to get decimated, and their offensive line has performed probably better than I think a lot of us expected them to. But when they really didn't take enough steps to shore up the losses they had up front, they've got, an aging Ezekiel Elliott still is their top back in the backfield, the guy that they want to feed, the guy that they want to give the carries, the guy that they want to give the touches to. They lost a ton of guys in the pass game. Amari Cooper's gone now. Cedric Wilson is in Miami. Michael Gallup, being injured, hasn't played for them yet. They have not been running an offense out there that scares a whole heck of a lot of people. They haven't used Jalen Tolbert all that much at all. Like I think some people thought that they would when especially when Gallup went down, when it looked like, they were going to have to run with CeeDee Lamb and someone else at the second position. We don't even have a target on the year yet, a play on the year yet for Jalen Tolbert, who a lot of people thought, I think, was going to be, again, piggybacking off of that great wide receiver class that was in the draft. I think some people had a lot higher hopes for Jalen Tolbert than he's shown. But through 2 games, CeeDee Lamb has been, a target sponge. He's got 22 targets through 2 games, 11 targets a game. That's what you're hoping for out of a number 1 guy, but he's only caught 9 of those balls. Week 1, catching 2 of 11. You can't continue to do that throughout the full season and be effective at all. Now he had a better game last week, obviously, but this just does not look right now like a team that has anybody to take any coverage away from him in terms of deep coverage. Dalton Schultz is still a great tight end. And, against the Giants, I think they're going to need Dalton Schultz. He doesn't have a touchdown on the year yet, but, Dalton Schultz is still the same guy that he was last year. He's still the same good weapon underneath. He's a good target. He's a good target in the red zone if they use him as such. Listed as questionable right now, but he's going to play, folks. So don't worry about that at all. But their pass game right now needs a lot of work, and it's not just because they've got Cooper Rush throwing the football. They need to figure out a way to get some guys involved and take some of that coverage away from Lamb and find someone else who can be a reliable receiver. Now, Noah Brown, through 2 weeks, 10 of 14 for 159 yards and a touchdown. He's been their leading receiver. He's got more catches than anybody else on the team. He's got more yards than anybody else on the team. But Noah Brown is not anybody's idea of a threat on the outside. I don't think anybody's scared. Teams are not game planning around Noah Brown when they see the Cowboys coming up on the schedule. They need to find a guy, and it would be nice if they could find that guy before Gallup comes back, because then when you get Gallup back, now you've got a legitimate 3 deep pass attack, 4 deep if you count Schultz in that mix. But Gallup's injury right now, he's listed as questionable for this week. Doesn't look like he's probably going to play. They need to figure out if they've got anybody else on that team that can catch a pass besides CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. Now, some of the preseason hype was around Tony Pollard being used much more as a Deebo Samuel type, as a Curtis Samuel type, like we've seen him in Washington. That he was going to see much more along the lines of receiving targets and splitting him out wide and getting Elliott in the backfield and Pollard, split out more, and that they were going to give him some run. And, I would think that would be a good compromise right now, or a good solution right now to your problem of not having really anybody in that receiving core that you can throw to and count on other than Lamb. I would think that, splitting Tony Pollard out would be a big help to that. Now, he does have 9 targets so far through 2 games, but he hasn't had near the run I think that we thought he was going to have split out wide. Ezekiel Elliott has looked sluggish. That said, he is still averaging over 4 yards a carry. He has not had all that much in the receiving game like we're used to seeing from Ezekiel Elliott, though. One of the things that always made Ezekiel Elliott an appealing option in the backfield was not just the fact that he was going to be running behind that offensive line and he was going to be explosive and a good runner that way, but you knew they were going to get Ezekiel Elliott the ball on the outside and through the screen game and through swing passes and that. He's only got 4 targets through 2 games. He has -7 yards receiving so far. So I'm on the record. You can go back. You can look at my Twitter. You can go back and look on Belly Up Fantasy, and you can look at watch some of these shows here. Go back and look at the archives. I'm on record as being in on Ezekiel Elliott this season. I thought that they like him enough. Jerry Jones likes him enough. What Jera likes, Jera gets. And I think Jerry wants them to still feature Ezekiel Elliott in that run game. And I thought, well, with the volume he's going to see, and with Dak Prescott throwing the football, I had high hopes for Ezekiel Elliott, even though, he is getting a little bit older and he may have lost a bit of a step here. Now, averaging 4 some yards a carry, if he's going to continue that and they want to continue to give him the ball, he's going to find the end zone at some point. But right now, it sure looks like, this is an offense that really doesn't have a ton of direction. I don't think they know if they want to be a running offense or a passing offense yet. They need to figure that out soon. They need to nail down their offensive identity. And when they do that, it's going to be better for everybody all the way around, not just from the standpoint of the Cowboys on the field, but for you and myself in our fantasy lineups, figuring out what the roles are and what their offensive identity is going to be on this team would go a long way towards making these talented pieces a lot more usable. CeeDee Lamb is going to get the targets in this offense. Even after Michael Gallup comes back, CeeDee Lamb's going to get the targets that we all kind of thought he was going to get this year. But if he can't catch more than 2 out of every 11 passes thrown at him, or from like he did week 1, he is not going to have the kind of value that we assumed. They need to figure out, are we going to try to be a pass first offense? Are we going to try to throw the ball down the field? Are we going to try to get the ball in the hands of CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Gallup when he comes back, possibly Brown, possibly are we going to actually even use Jalen Tolbert this year? Kevontae Turpin, a little bit of a preseason darling, kick returner and punt returner. He's obviously has some electric ability with the ball in his hands, but they haven't really given him a whole lot of run, a whole lot of look yet at receiver. He does have a couple of targets, hasn't caught a pass yet though. But they have used him a little bit as a gadget play, a little, they've given him a look here and there, a smattering of looks here and there on offense. But, are we going to be a team? Is Dallas going to be a team that tries to pass the ball and then back that up with the run, as opposed to being reliant on Ezekiel Elliott? Or are they going to try to be a team that runs through Elliott and Pollard and then uses that to hit CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz? They need to figure that out, I think, in a hurry, because otherwise they're not going anywhere. And if they lose this week to the Giants, that's a divisional game, and you're allowing one of your divisional opponents to take a pretty commanding lead on you after only 3 weeks. It's not going to do anything to quiet the Wolves from calling for Mike McCarthy's head or speculating about Sean Payton taking over there. But now on the other side of the field, we got New York Giants. Like we said, this is a team that looks like they're surprising some people in with their grit and with their fight. Now, Daniel Jones is a guy that, they obviously they haven't picked up his option. We don't know if they want to keep him, in the fold going forward. This is a guy that's hit 71% of his passes so far this year. He's been very efficient. He's only thrown 1 pick. He's got 3 touchdowns on the year. I like Daniel Jones from the standpoint of, I think, he's almost got the Alex Smith syndrome. Alex Smith, I think, took a lot of heat before. Later in his career, I think he finally got some of the credit he deserved. But a lot of people looked at taking Alex Smith overall number 1 and then letting Aaron Rodgers sit and fall to where he eventually fell. A lot of people looked back in hindsight at all that and thought, well, of course Aaron Rodgers should have been number 1. Look what he's done compared to Alex Smith. look at what happened. And this kind of connects back to my point about Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. Look at how the two of those men were developed by their teams. The Packers had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Brett Favre, and we won't get into Brett Favre right now, but they had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Brett Favre, and they were allowed the luxury and held themselves to the luxury of allowing Rodgers to sit back and develop for 3 years behind one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and a guy that had all of the physical tools that Brett Favre was not the runner that Aaron Rodgers is capable of being. He's not the athletic talent that Aaron Rodgers is capable of being. But from an arm strength standpoint and those kinds of things, Brett Favre was a good guy for Aaron Rodgers to be able to watch and learn and develop behind. And he could learn the offense. He could get to know the guys he was with. He got to see game situations for 3 years before he had to get thrown in there to the Wolves as the starter. Alex Smith had, something like 4 different head coaches and 5 or 6 different offensive coordinators in his first handful of years in the league. If you ever would have allowed that guy the opportunity to learn an offense and have it from 1 year to the next under the same coaching staff, under the same regime, who knows how far Alex Smith could have gone, or how much better or how much farther ahead his career could have been. And that's my point with Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky. Do not put Kenny Pickett in a situation where Matt Canada, maybe, who knows what his job status will be after this season, depending on how the season shakes out. Mike Tomlin has been there for a long time, the longest tenured coach in a league with his current team, I believe. Who knows how much longer those kinds of things are going to be there. If you're not going to go anywhere this season, you've got a terrible offensive line and you need to build that up. Why throw him out there? Hold him back and let him develop. Well, Daniel Jones likewise has had a ton of different coaches come through the organization. And we all saw what happened under Jason Garrett as offensive coordinator. You need to allow Daniel Jones to see one offense, learn that offense, use that offense, and be under one coaching staff. And if they can do that, if they make the decision this season to bring him back for next season, if they can build on the success, that it looks like they can have this season, Daniel Jones may be able to prove something. Now, I don't think that Daniel Jones is going to all of a sudden explode and be a star top 10 type quarterback in this league, but you drafted the guy to be your starter, and then you have done a terrible, terrible job at supporting him with all of the chaos that's been above him in the coaching staff and his, learning a new system every 13 minutes of his career so far. They haven't necessarily surrounded him with a ton of great talent. His running game has been, quite literally in some cases almost hamstringed by, Saquon Barkley's injury woes, his knee problems and that. Give Daniel Jones the chance to actually play. He's athletic as all hell. He was one of the best running quarterbacks in football, in my opinion. And you may or may not believe that, but go take a look at some of his highlights. Watch the kid run the football sometime. If he can complete 70% of his passes and run the ball like he runs, if Saquon Barkley can keep looking like he's looked this year, this is a team that could surprise some people offensively. Daniel Jones could prove himself to be, he could win himself a job and prove himself to be a viable quarterback going forward. I like Daniel Jones in Dynasty. I tried to grab a couple shares of him in Dynasty because I think that with that rushing ability that he has, if they ever give him an opportunity to actually develop in the same system, he's got some potential to be like one of those high floor type quarterbacks. Maybe never a quarterback 1, but in a super flex type league, maybe a quarterback 2. Sunday, they've got a great opportunity against the Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys have actually performed a little bit better on defense than I think a lot of people thought that they would. But they've got an opportunity this Sunday for a big game. If they can take advantage of, some of their matchups, they've got some athletic guys. They have not used Kadarius Toney a ton. They used him more last week than they did week 1. And that's good because he is obviously one of the more talented players on that team. They need to find ways to get him the ball. If Wan'Dale Robinson can get healthy, doesn't look like he may play this Sunday, but they've got some guys there. Now, Sterling Shepard looks like a guy who's seen quite a few. He's seen quite a few, looks these first couple of weeks. He's leads the team in targets after 2 games. I think the shock right now, and a guy that should be looked at, and it maybe might be a sneaky good play for you in daily right now is Richie James. Now, Richie James is a guy that, I mean, no one had ever heard of his name before the first 2 weeks of the season here, but he's leading the team in receiving. He's got more yards than anybody else on that team. He's got more catches than anybody else on that team. And he's getting some looks, and he's getting open and showing himself to be, to be actually a viable option in this team. He has outplayed Kenny Golladay, and that's a situation to watch too. Galladay's got the big contract on that team, but Golladay has not gotten a lot of looks. He's got 2 targets through 2 games. And he had, the report was that he had his stuff packed up and he was out of the locker room before reporters were even allowed in this past weekend. I don't think he's very happy with his situation there. But, Darius Slayton is not getting the looks, and Slayton and Golladay are 2 of the guys that have name recognition in that receiving core. Richie James is a guy to watch if you can pick him up. If you've got spot on your bench for him, pick him up, take a look at him. If you can afford to hold on to him for a little bit, because if this Giants passing offense continues to have operated as efficiently as it has so far, Richie James, Sterling Shepard may end up having some good, flex. They may be flex capable options for you going forward. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. That's going to do it for us. As always, you can catch me on Twitter at STT Chase, FFB, Chase Thornton there on Twitter. Tomorrow I should have the week 2 blitz pickup. If you saw that from week 1, the blitz pickup where we talk about usage rates and tidbits from utilization and from snap counts and things like that, so that you know who's getting used and who's not. Take a look at that on bellyupfantasy.com. I'll have that coming out. Should be tomorrow. My rankings should be updated tomorrow as well. And you can catch me this Sunday morning coming up on the Sunday morning pregame show, the Belly Up Fantasy Live. That's going to be at 10 o'clock Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Check us out there. It'll be at Real Mr. Mallard, Andrew LeDuc, and myself and Kevin Wilson. So give us a look there as well. Till then, good best of luck with whoever you've got in your lineup tomorrow night. And we will see you then. Slanja.